Welcome to this initial online video tutorial on the differences between and the use of count and non-count nouns. In this segment, you're going to learn about the different categories that determine countability or non-countability of certain nouns, the differences of the noun-verb agreement of the two forms, and the use of determiners in both the singular and plural forms of count nouns and the non-count forms. We will touch base on some of the problematic forms in the next lesson. The concept of count versus non-count nouns presents special problems for non-native speakers. First, choosing which nouns are countable and which nouns are non-countable is by no means universal. For example, although somebody can advise us several times, we can't say they give us advices. And yet that would translate quite nicely into several other languages. We would say in English that they give us advice. In some languages, it makes sense to sit in a restaurant with a friend and ask for waters. And then you get 2 glasses of water. This would sound very strange in English. When talking about nouns, people, places, or things, and when referring to one or many of the items, we generally are talking about countable things. These things are things such as students, suburbs, apartments, mistakes, products, and so on. For a complete list, please see the references at the end of this presentation. Notice that I have mentioned all of these in the plural form with the S ending. That is because we can refer to several of them. In other words, they are countable. There is, however, another category of nouns that is not possible to count, and these are generally referred to as non-count. They refer to things such as materials, qualities, or actions. In the most general sense, and others will be discussed in Part 2, these are referring to qualities such as intelligence and patience, substances such as food and salt, processes such as teaching and failure, and topics such as philosophy or love, rather than to individual items or events. For count nouns, when you use a singular form, you need to use the singular form of the verb. Here's an example. A dog likes to eat far more meat than a human being. In the same sense, when you're using the plural form, use a plural form of the verb. For example, bigger dogs cost more. When using non-count or countable things as the subject, you need to use a singular form of the verb. Here are some examples. Intelligence is determined by how one responds to a certain situation, not by a score on a test. Salt that has lost its flavor is useless. It is believed that teaching is one of the more respectable professions in some countries. Notice that all of these take the singular verb form. A simple way to look at the use of articles or determiners in front of count and non-count nouns would be to talk about those that are only used with count, those that are only used with non-count, and those that can be used with both. Here's a list of the count. A, many, few, a few, and then with the non-count, much, little, a little bit of, and then with both of them you can have nothing in front, the or the, some, any, no, a lot of, lots of, enough, and plenty of. The count determiners are referring to a specific number of items in both the singular and plural sense. Here's an example. Is there a doctor in the building? This refers to one doctor. A few substantial reasons were given to support his stand. This refers to 2 or 3 reasons, which is countable. The non-count determiners refer to the whole or part of the whole item being talked about. For example, much of the furniture in this room is not comfortable, referring to a good portion of the furniture, such as tables, chairs, etc. Another example would be this. The excellent student had little need for advice on his paper. This refers to a small portion of need, which is not countable. Determiners that can be used for both offer a safe way to talk about nouns, especially if you're not sure which to use. Here's an example. Some research has been done in this area. It's a non-countable but uses the word some. Note with this particular word that you will find researches in some cases, but it is more common to find the word research as non-count in the university academic setting here in the United States. In this case, some studies have been done in this area. Studies is countable, but it uses the same determiner. Here you can see he was offered no advice. No, the determiner is modifying advice, which is non-count. Again, the same thing. No textbooks were used in this class. Textbooks is countable, but we're using the same determiner, no, in front. Now let's double check to see how you're doing. Consider the nouns in the following sentences and decide whether they are countable things or non-count items, and then add the plural endings if necessary. Note, you can always pause the video to take more time to consider. Eggs and chickens are countable things in this sentence. We know we are talking about the many eggs that the birds produce in her yard. Consider this sentence. Here we're talking about the meat and the cooked grain because of the meal situation. Note that small grains such as rice, wheat, sugar, etc. are most commonly considered so small that we cannot count them. Thus, they are in the non-count category. Here's another. A lot of can precede both count and non-count. However, here we understand the writer is viewing individual trees, bushes, and flowers outside of his window. Grass and dirt, however, are in the category of items that are considered uncountable because of the impossible task of counting the individual blades of grass or the grains of dirt. Now let's see how you do on choosing the determiners. Choose one of the determiners that would modify the count noun or one that would modify the non-count noun from the list below to complete the sentence. Do not use the determiners that could be used for both in the middle column, though these would be normally easy to use. We still want you to distinguish now clearly between the count and non-count nouns in this exercise. Note that times has the plural s attached. This shows that it is clearly countable. Try this one. Here, time is uncountable or non-count. They are not talking about individual events, but a length or duration of the larger sense of time. Here's another. Here, hope is referring to an abstraction or a quality which is uncountable. Here's one more. In this case, country refers to a particular country that is not specified, but it is only referring to one single country and is therefore a count noun. In this video, you have seen some of the differences between count and non-count nouns. That count nouns are generally referring to people, places, and things, and that non-count nouns are referring to qualities, substances, processes, and topics. We've talked about making sure to match the verb form for each, singular and plural for count, and singular for non-count. In addition, we looked at some of the determiners that are specific to either count or non-count nouns, and those that can be used for both. In the next video, we will be looking at groups of nouns that play both sides of the fence, or that can be considered both count in some cases and non-count in others. Happy counting, or not.